Welcome to the Inner Alignment Podcast, a neuroscience approach to healing anxiety and depression caused by childhood trauma stored in the body. With the right tools, healing long-term anxiety and depression is completely possible when you heal at root cause. Join me as we expand boundaries in the field of trauma recovery with the revolutionary Inner Alignment System, a 6-layered approach to addressing stored trauma in every layer of the body. Hello and welcome to the Inner Alignment for Childhood Trauma podcast. I'm your host, Kim Beekman. Today we're going to be talking about the second of the 3 pillars of the Inner Alignment System, which is rewiring the 6-layered body. This is what sustains our Inner Alignment Soul Retrieval work and really establishes a neuroscience-based approach to healing. Today, we have Christine Kramer with us. She's an Inner Alignment Practitioner who's a fitness consultant. She's a yoga teacher, and she's also an Inner Alignment Practitioner, Soul Retrieval healer. So she does a lot of rewiring with our Inner Alignment clients and really has a specific expertise in mentoring our clients with addiction patterns. So welcome. It's so great to have you here with us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kim. I'm honored to be here. I'm always honored to be part of this work and to be bringing it out into the world and especially discussing the rewiring, which is my specialty. So thank you for having me.
What we know so clearly is that you can go in and heal those trauma packets and create a completely different consciousness in the body and establish like this deep inner connection to self. But the neuroscience of healing suggests, and through our experience and trial and error, we know that if you don't sustain that healing and literally neurosynaptically, neurochemically, energetically wire that in as your new base sensations, thoughts, emotions, physical, energetic awareness of who you are, then within a week of that soul retrieval, creating all of those gorgeous ahas and integrations of who we are, within about 5 to 10 days, those new neural pathways will start to truncate, and someone may lose the feeling of healing because they never wired it into their thoughts and their emotions and their energetics and their nervous system, right? So it's just absolutely critical to anchor in, sustain, rewire the way that we are, the way we think and the way that we feel, so that we can really have this as our new way of thinking and feeling.
Yeah, that's right, Kim. It's those neural pathways are very strong and they will truncate, just like you said, but the rewiring work is not hard to do. It just has to be done. And so that's what my job is with our clients, is to just encourage and check in every day. There's daily encouragement to check in on how are those practices going. And so it is the other half of the work is the sustainability of the rewiring. And what's really nice is the rewiring practices go along with you beyond the 8 weeks. So you take them with you and then you have them forever. So just to get those wired in, that they're your practices that you're going to do every day. It doesn't take a whole lot of time, but it is a change in lifestyle.
It's true. You know, as a personal fitness consultant and really working with people in the physical body, I wonder if that lends itself to being so gifted in being able to help support people in the rewiring of their brain, nervous system, body, thoughts, emotions. Because, I mean, you can't just go to the gym once, right?
It's absolutely the same as you don't just work out for a couple weeks and then let it go. It doesn't work that way. And many of my clients that I have worked with healing and rewiring that do work out regularly do get the concept when you put it in that container.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like
And
it's
when you do your practices regularly, you'll begin to know when you're off. You'll just feel it in your body that, oh, I need my breath work. I really have been slipping in. You can feel it so profoundly in your body, just like your body can really feel it profoundly if you're not working out
yeah,
regularly.
yeah. So, with inner alignment, we have the soul retrieval that happens. And when it happens in the second dimension consciousness, really right in the body, we are really planting new thoughts, new emotions, new experiences, new nervous system responses, new divine connections on every layer of the body. We are creating a new energy packet of what safety or connection or love or truth or any worthiness feels like in the body. So each layer of the body is involved in that soul retrieval. And so the consistent rewiring needs to be absolutely parallel to what we're working in the soul retrieval. For example, if you're working with someone who doesn't have their truth or doesn't feel strong enough to express themselves or express boundaries, then the rewiring practices need to fortify that which we worked in the soul retrieval on day-to-day life. So rewiring practices are customized, even though they're standard practices, they look very different for every client based on the subject matter that they've come to this lifetime to work on. Joe Dispenza really has done beautiful work that talks about thoughts and beliefs and habits. And in his book, Evolve Your Brain, he says, you think about 65,000 thoughts in one day. And about 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before. The same thoughts will lead to the same choices. The same choices will lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors will always create the same experiences. And the same experiences will always produce the same emotions. Those same emotions dictate our biology, our neurocircuitry, our neurochemistry, and our neurohormones. Even your genetic expression stays exactly equal to how you think, how you act, and how you feel. So he says, how you think, how you act, and how you feel is your ego personality, which creates your personal reality. I think that really sums up what we're doing. So once we identify trauma on the six-layered body, we then need to rewire ourselves in our thoughts, in our emotions, our neurocircuitry, neurochemistry, our hormones, our neurotransmitter receptors. And we all know about neuroplasticity, right? We all know that we can change the way the brain is wired and constructed. And I think in trauma healing, that consistent work is absolutely critical because of how early we got wired up and what we cobbled together from a young age, being so deeply held in the neurocircuitry of the body.
People are really wired up. They don't even realize how wired up they are for even tension in the body. And so when we begin breath work, it's one of the first tools that we give, depending on which breath work aligns best with which particular client, depending on what elements they have in their body. Are they earth? Are they fire? Are they air? Are they air imbalanced? And so we figure that out very quickly, and we design their breath work for them and assign them that breath work. And one woman I had in particular had very severe neck pain. And she said that within a week, maybe even quicker, 4 or 5 days of doing her proper breath work, it's like her shoulders just relaxed and the pain just dissolved.
Yeah.
And she said, I've been having this chronic neck pain for months and months, maybe almost a year. And so that's how profound it can be in the physical body.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so that's really kind of gets us into these six layers. So the physical body nervous system and the the impact of rewiring the physical body is absolutely critical. We have both the neurocircuitry, but also the nervous system and the nervous system response. So, as you said, once someone starts to do soul retrieval and then they bring that, just that one practice of, borrowed from yoga, that pranayama or that medicine that fits their energetic constitution, because a lot of people are throwing themselves out of balance by not choosing the correct breath work to balance themselves. And we'll talk about the energetic body, at some other point. But to be able to begin to regulate the nervous system, like you said, in the proper way is going to affect so many other aspects of ourselves. But most importantly, it'll help the client to regulate out of a fear response, out of the fight or flight response, and to move in from sympathetic nervous system response into reconditioning a parasympathetic response. So breath work is kind of like the beautiful medicine to do that, because it will activate the vagus nerve and send the message back to the brain that, okay, we're safe. Nope, I'm safe right now. So even with a reactivated trauma packet that's not had soul retrieval or has not been healed yet, we can use breath work as long as they're doing the correct breath work for their constitution, as a way for the nervous system to get the signal of, yeah, even though you've been triggered for 40 years in the same fight or flight response, you can calm down, everything's safe. And that's pretty critical if you want to get out of fear and you want to get out of the conditioned trauma response, right?
Certain clients will actually have an effect of all of a sudden they might be sleepy during the day, when usually they're just doing all day. And all of a sudden the body wisdom just comes and says, I need a nap. And that it really is my truth. I need to take a nap today and tomorrow and the next day. And it can land like that as your nervous system is beginning to regulate, your body starts to tell you what it needs.
Right. So someone who's spent their life in fight or flight and are like taxing their adrenals because they're running on adrenaline because they are what they do and their unworthiness is tied to that. Once we get them doing some level of breath or some level of connection, their nervous system calms down and they're actually realizing how tired they are, or they're realizing their body is giving them signals of like, oh, it's time to rest my body, doing more in order for me to feel worthy. That pattern starts to loosen with the soul retrieval process. And then there's that space and that conditioning to be able to listen and connect. And connecting to the physical body through a regulated nervous system is like the core and most fundamental aspect of the rewiring process. It's like the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde aspect of like, we're going through life. And if we're in trauma brain and we're in a reactivated trauma packet, and we're overlaying that, we're in like amygdala response. We're in that trauma brain, animal brain response. And a lot of people are just living life in an animal brain reaction of, I need to feel worthy, I need to feel safe. But when we start the rewiring practices and we recondition the brain and the nervous system, we're able to bring them into thinking brain. And I don't mean analyze their problems, but just like be in the prefrontal cortex and be able to be like, oh, I feel like I'm going to die. But actually, now that my nervous system is regulated and I've been able to switch from animal brain to thinking brain, I'm able to see what's going on in this present moment. And in the present moment, the lion's doesn't have its jaw around my neck. I'm actually okay.
Yes.
And so the physical body rewiring allows people to come back into the present moment in a more regulated state and be with what is in the present moment.
And to notice the difference, whether a client, what is their go-to fear response? Depending again on doshas, always going back to the doshas. Are you a fighter? Are you a flighter? Are you a freezer? And then do you fawn? And noticing how that lands differently, maybe in different relationships and different parts of your life. And maybe at work you fawn, maybe in partnership you fight. And so all of a sudden, what happens during rewiring and as a result of the soul retrieval healings is people start to develop awareness as to what they do, or they are aware when they are fawning or fighting. And then they can try to implement, well, if I want to fight, maybe I'll freeze instead. Or if I want to flight, maybe I can learn how to stay. And that is profound for people because it's almost like a duck quacks, a flighter flights, a fighter fights. And as soon as they realize, oh, there's another way, it's so simple, but it's so big to realize I don't have to leave, I can stay. Or I don't have to fight, I can just be.
Yeah,
And
I can ground in this moment and regulate myself and find a new way in this relationship that triggers me so much.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. The fear responses are actually wired into our nervous system and they're rooted in trauma packets. And so, someone who might fight a lot at home because they don't feel like they're heard or they don't feel like their truth matters to their spouse. And so they're fighting and need to be right. That's wired into the nervous system. And as you said, they might even have a different response. They might know that they can't fight at work. And so they just flight in that situation and they, avoid the boss and they develop all of those patterns at work with a different fear response. And our work, once we build awareness, is to help them try on a different response. And it's pretty cool to do this. Like I'm fiery. I'm an Aries with an Aries rising with a lot of fire in my constitution. So fight is my go-to response. And my rewiring work has always been to regulate, find that pause, and then to learn how to fawn, how to really accommodate and be more caring or more compassionate or more easeful, which is not natural. Like I'm not built that. I'm a lion. I'm not built in the way of like pausing and moving forward with care. I'm like a bulldozer. So someone with a fight response needs to rewire and condition their nervous system response in a way that balances out their original response.
So the fire needs to freeze.
Yeah, freeze and
Yeah,
then maybe even build a fawn response where
right.
the freezer, the person that freezes or flights, they might need to stay and find their fight, which might not look like fighting if it's balanced, but it might look like stay, figure out what your truth is, and speak it, like reconditioning like that scary thing to speak your truth or to say, please don't talk to me like that. Right? That to someone with a freeze or a flight response feels like death. They'll have a death fear because when they did that with their mom at 6 years old, they got slapped. And so they wired into their brain and body, like, don't do that. That's dangerous.
Mm.
And so really helping people balance out their fear response once their thinking brain comes back in board is critical, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have, with the physical layer of the body, we also have movement practices that allows prana and breath and movement in a way that expands the heart and gets the person to stay really balanced and grounded in their body. Because most of the time we're just big heads, we're just minds coming or walking around with lots of thoughts. And that reconnection to a regulated nervous system and to be able to stay connected to the present moment in the body is just, it's gold.
Mm.
It's really life altering and changing for so many people. Okay, so let's move into the mental layer of the body. This is the layer that a lot of people, their thoughts, their beliefs, a lot of people are doing a lot of reading. They're reading a lot of books, they're listening to podcasts. There's a lot of thinking about their problems, but that's not really what we're doing when we're rewiring. And, just to backtrack, we text with our clients 24/7. So we provide round the clock support to be able to work with them when they hit an issue so we can get them out of trauma brain into thinking brain, so we can start to listen to some of their thoughts that are showing up in the present moment. And it's when they communicate with us from the animal brain that we can hear some of those irrational thoughts that haven't been filtered by, I shouldn't think that way, or that's not how the world works, because people who've been on their path know what they should be thinking. But the animal brain is really kicking up some irrational thoughts. And so when we get to hear those thoughts in real time over 2 months, we can really start to hear what their beliefs and their thought patterns and their mental cognitive way of putting the world together is. And that's where we have this sacred opportunity to get people, while they're doing their pattern of avoiding communication with their spouse, and to help them find the words, or to help them find their truth. And to, in this example of this male spouse, help them to say what they feel or think in a given moment, which sounds like rudimentary, but it's really, when we're hitting our trauma responses and have that pattern of flighting, we're not thinking about get me out of here. We're just getting out of there. So, to be able to rewire someone's thought patterns and belief systems, and to help them, we always say, get the data, to build a data set of, if I stay and I communicate what I want and I set a boundary, what happens? And it's through that rewiring every day with them that they are able to build a new data set on what it is to have space for my truth in this marriage, for example.
I feel the mind is very interwoven again with the fear responses. I believe that I have to believe because I cannot be heard. I will not be heard, when all we sometimes have to do is just question a person. Do you really have to leave? Or you won't be heard? And you'll see the light bulb go on. Like, maybe I don't, because it's just so deeply wired in the body that they have to fight. So this mental body of ours, which is our mind is a beautiful thing. We are constantly questioning it in this work with rewiring, and we're doing other mental body practices to try to put our mind on the shelf and go into our body and into stillness. And from that place of stillness, be able to figure out what is true and what isn't. So we question our belief systems all the time in this work. And it's profound. And it can be the littlest, like, do you really have to fight? Do you have to go? Or can you stay?
And it's so iterative, because as someone questions, as they become aware of what they're thinking. So again, awareness layer of the body helps us to actually even see that I'm thinking thoughts around, I'm not safe here in this relationship, right? Because I wasn't aware of that in that moment that I was just avoiding a conversation with my spouse. So the practices on the mental layer of the body can help in neutralizing it. We call it neutralization, but if someone has a strong negative mind and they're thinking negative thoughts, we're able to import the positive aspects. Or if they have too much positive mind and they're spiritually bypassing a negative situation, we can balance that out with what's not working. So we have such a unique opportunity to hear what someone thinks throughout the day and be able to pose new ways and new frameworks as they open their consciousness through the soul retrieval process. And then if they have a busy mind that's just like thinking and thinking and thinking, the practices that we give them can help them steady their mind on something more productive. I think of it like a working dog, like if you've ever had a border collie, like they need to stay busy. Well, the mind often needs to stay busy. So instead of ruminating about negative thoughts, if we can get it to stay busy on something that's producing positive vibration in the body, and then slow it down from there. So meet it at 100 miles an hour and then ratchet it down until it steadies into a more neutral, less polarized space. And it's really cool to watch that happen over the 8 weeks. It does take about 6 weeks to really see that settle into their belief systems and thought structures, doesn't it?
Neutrality is the goal, is be bringing the thoughts into neutrality, especially when there's a lot of negative mind. But as you said, sometimes people are living in positive mind, and that could be very much why a lot of things aren't working out for them also, that they're, kind of all that smoke is being blown out by their positive mind now. Like, oh, it's okay, I'm just going to keep blowing this smoke out. And that they can be fawners that are living in the positive mind.
Yep,
Um,
people pleasers, right?
yeah, yeah. And so, but finding the neutrality and steadying the boat.
So it's funny when some people think neutrality, they think they're going to be just like in love or light, or they're going to be numb. But when we talk about the spiritual layer of the body, it's almost like the heart is ignited really passionately in the present moment. So the happiness is literally wired in and coming from within. And then the mind's not grasping to the attachment of needing to be right or needing to get the man or the woman, or right. So the attachment of this is going to make me happy, or the resistance of I got to get away from this because it's making me upset, that lessens in that space of neutrality. And we're neither running from situations or running towards situations to get our happiness. And there's a deep sense of being content in that space when the mind kind of loosens its grip on our life and allows us to just feel some peace in the present moment. There's so much freedom in that.
Yes, I think that's really key. What you just said about attachment. We have a lot of mental attachments.
Yeah, as you just said that, I was just thinking about the empath. We work with a lot of empaths or energetically sensitive people. And so, some people need to be right, but some people just need to feel safe in their body. And when they don't, when their nervous system's really triggered and their energy field is not strengthened enough, they might feel like they have to push people away because they don't feel good, because they feel everything that's coming out of that person. And so they might be just like literally pushing or in resistance to people because they can't feel safe or grounded in their body when they're around them. So whether someone's resisting someone or they're attaching themselves to a thought or to a person, either way, that's going to create fear. That mental process is going to feel fearful because I can't get what I need in the present moment because I need to control or isolate in order to feel okay. And coming to neutrality is not like accepting people's bad behavior. And it's not about not wanting or desiring things, because I think we're always going to have an ego until we're enlightened. But it's about feeling like I can get safety or connection or my worthiness or feel loved or seen or heard or connected to myself from within myself, so that I'm not in constant resistance to my thoughts or your actions or what I'm doing. And that just feels so huge.
It's very empowering to feel that neutrality. It's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And that kind of gets us to the emotional layer of the body. In the yogic system, they see the mental and emotional being the same layer of the body, but in inner alignment, we see them kind of as very interconnected but separate, because the way that we work with them with the practices is actually very different. So the mind needs to slow down and stabilize and become neutral in that space. Whereas the emotions, the felt sensations in the body, really need to be processed in a very different way. Like whether an emotion is coming from, some people don't even know whether the fear that they are feeling is an old trauma packet vibration that's stored in a trauma packet, or whether it's the emotional guidance system saying, go toward that, go away from that. So just being able to decipher and feel, I mean, before even deciphering, some people have shut down their emotional layer of their body altogether, and they don't feel. And they don't know what they're feeling because they're living in their thoughts. And people who feel a lot, who did their 10 years of therapy, have intellectualized what they feel, and they really aren't feeling at all. So really getting someone reconnected to their emotions, not anger so much. Anger is a second, anger, guilt, shame, those are more secondary emotions. We're talking about feeling sad or feeling hurt or feeling vulnerable or feeling unworthy or unloved. Those more vulnerable emotions are usually connected to trauma packet death fears. So that emotion, to actually give it some space and to feel it, feels like death. And in our work, we don't just look at just feeling it. And it's true, feeling it does help heal it, but feeling the smoke and the fire doesn't actually resolve the sensations.
There are many people that I've come across that really do have a hard time feeling the emotion in the body, or they might only feel it for a couple seconds and then it sort of goes away. And I feel it's been resistant. Some people are they have so much fear around feeling their heavier emotions. And sometimes it is the shame and the guilt and the anger, the secondary emotion. And so what I'll do as a rewiring coach is say, okay, well, can you just feel that? Or I will sometimes I've got an example of, can you just use something light? Not something heavy, use something light, since there's so much fear wired in around it. How about, your next door neighbor left his garbage can in your driveway and that's annoying? Can you feel that in your body? Because that feels much more safe. So sometimes we have to start with those smaller benign issues and feel that in the body, and just get practice feeling someone cut me off in the grocery store, and okay, and feel the annoyance in your body first to get the practice to feel anything negative in the body. And
Yes.
people often find out that they're feeling those little negative things all day long. And sometimes those little negative things of the garbage can or someone cutting them off are often in avoidance of the bigger ones. And so just starting with the little ones is a great way to begin.
Yeah, I think your point is so beautiful, because often people are like, well, how do you create emotional awareness with folks over 2 months? And it's really in those spaces of learning how to stay connected to our emotions in our bodies, like being able to even feel those sensations before deciphering them or processing them, which is so important. And that's a learned behavior. Like, we actually have to develop emotionally. There are a lot of clients, male or female, that we have to teach them how to feel and learn to feel safe feeling without analyzing it or fixing the feeling. Really just being able to allow the emotional layer of the body to be there. You and I work a lot together on people who have addiction. And what we find is that from the age that the addiction started, let's say they started drinking or getting high at 13 and had ever since, and now they're sober, because we do ask people to be sober when they start our work. They really, in terms of emotional development, they may have stopped developing emotionally at 13 years old when that addiction started. So sometimes it's really just back to basics around emotions and being able to create emotional capacity after 40 years of numbing.
Thank you for bringing that up. It's been amazing actually in this work to watch people learn to feel and to feel safe just feeling the energy of a negative emotion rather than going for the drink or going for the joint or whatever the substance might be that has often been how they process the emotion. They just haven't even known how to process. They don't know how to feel because that's been the go-to. And so it's been really amazing to see some people get clarity on their addiction by being able to just feel those negative emotions.
Yeah. So sometimes people will come in and they'll come in to work to get sober, and some people will be new on their sobriety path. So we have had these experiences. And what we find is for the people who have addictions who didn't tell us they had addictions, they start to, through these practices in the soul retrieval, they start to realize, like, with the capacity to feel, they're able to get ahead of that automatic habit to drink or to smoke or to vape or to whatever, shop or eat the cereal at 11 p.m. So the connection to self, although they've been avoiding it like the plague for 40 years, uh, actually allows them to tend to themselves emotionally, so that they're not tending through the addiction. They're not numbing it or trying to bring relief through the addiction. And that's just so rewarding to watch. Like the person who is maybe drinking a little too much wine actually is not reaching for the wine at night and is doing another practice. They're just doing their practices, and the practice replaced the numbing.
There's a lot of fear wired around actually feeling a heavy emotion in your body. And people will avoid it. They feel it's so unpleasant. I just can't, it's too painful, but it's just energy. And once they can learn how to do it and practice it, and that's what we offer in this work is this safe container to explore it. They can express, they're held in a container of love. And all of a sudden it's just not scary anymore. It's like not that big of a deal. And once someone can learn to feel a heavy emotion and even heavier emotion and know that it's just energy, and once you feel it, you can process it, really you don't have the need for that substance anymore. Now that you might still have to work on the habit of the substance or whatever it is, like you said, it could be eating. But even I had one client who said, I'm just not going to get the ice cream. I don't need to. I'm feeling it in my heart right here. And I want the ice cream, but I'm feeling something here and I'm just going to feel and process it.
Yeah.
And that she
So
really noticed she didn't need the ice cream.
right. So the feel and process. So the first is awareness. I have emotions and to be able to feel them. And then when we help them, when we teach them how to process emotion and actually work with the sensation and work with the trauma packets and work with the body memory on their own, which is not a soul retrieval, but it does mimic the pathways. Like once we plow the pathways through soul retrieval, then they can use our tools to actually begin to process emotion and really move through and transmute emotion, that shows up in their body. And that's an important part of our work. We want to empower people to be able to do this work on themselves. We don't want people dependent on us every time they hit a rough point in their life. And so that empowerment to be able to process your own emotion, or those, whether it's big emotion, old emotion, present moment, inner guidance emotion, is it's really powerful, especially from those who shut down their emotions for most of their lives. So that's the emotional layer of the body. So we've talked about the physical, the mental, and the emotional. So let's now dig into the awareness layer, because we've been talking about it. You have to be aware of what you're feeling physically and what you're thinking and what you're feeling emotionally, right? So awareness is a really profound aspect of our consciousness. So we can be on the hamster wheel doing our thing, reacting, or we can be on the hamster wheel, still doing our thing, and watching ourselves, witnessing, seeing what we're doing in that dramatic stage, that theatrical stage, and the roles that we're playing in life. So when we can get into the audience and become aware of what we're thinking and what we're saying and what we're doing and why we did that and the acting, and without any judgment, just a state of consciousness, it opens our world so deeply of who I am, the big I, like the soul consciousness of who I am, without any judgment of like, I should have done this, I shouldn't have done this. Why did I, if I could just do, none of the mental body involved in that state of non-judgmental, loving awareness
Yeah.
that we can wire in and activate in every moment of our lives.
It's beautiful to watch somebody learn about themselves, to learn about their soul qualities and all of their positives. And we have our negatives as well, our shadows, and to learn all about themselves and to just kind of sit in the middle of it. And that's something we really work. We have an exercise where we work with our clients to become so self-aware of, okay, these are my patterns. This is a little later in the program where we're going over all of this stuff, because we now know what constitution we are. And I'm fiery, or I'm air, or I'm earth, and I'm a fawner, or I'm a fighter. And I tend to, freeze, or whatever someone's fear response is. And then you start looking at your own mind habits. And once you become aware, it's just no longer, it doesn't just happen. You do not react to it. And so that awareness layer, we call it in this work, as you know, being in the eye of the storm as everything is kind of happening around you. And you're just sort of witnessing, like you said, you're panned out, noticing, but you're not getting stuck in it. Nothing's happening to you physically. You're not getting, sucked into that storm. You're sitting and observing.
Right. So Eckhart Tolle calls it a pain body. And we work very often with people who are in pain bodies. And when someone's in a pain body, they get wrapped up into the storm. But our work is to help them be able to see the pain body and to stop feeding the pain body, or that deep death fear emotional reaction that they got swept in. You once said something like, it's like, once you build this awareness, it's kind of like, oh, here I am. Oh, look at me. I'm just doing my thing. Look at me doing my thing again, right? Like there's this neutrality and non-judgment and compassion
Yeah.
that happens when you don't take your patterns too seriously, and then you get space to actually be able to change the patterns.
In our work, when we do go over pain bodies and we start sort of calling out these pain bodies that we have a lot of fun with it. We like to name them and give them little characters and almost amplify them. And it's a lot of fun actually to look at those parts of yourself and be able to laugh at them. And then it's sort of just putting that awareness on the pain bodies sort of disables them.
It
Once
does.
you're aware of, well, oh, here's that thing I do again. It's a habit. It's a place you will not step again.
Yeah, Brene Brown talks a lot about shame and vulnerability. And I think when you can get some space and awareness and see your patterns and not judge yourself or hate yourself or self-loathe them, but actually find some lightness around your shadow qualities. Because in our work, the shadow is actually just the other side of the soul's gifts. right? So if I'm a fiery lion, doshically, and I get bitchy and yell at people, and then the other side of that, when I'm balanced, is I'm a leader and I speak my truth, right? So any shadow qualities has the soul aspect on the other side of the element. And when we get someone aware of like, oh, that's just your fire, that's just your whatever, it takes the shame and the self-judgment out of the picture. And when someone's not judging and shaming and hating on themselves, then there's a great deal of self-forgiveness that seeps in, and self-compassion and self-awareness. Like, we're not scared to look at that part of ourselves that we've made bad and wrong and shameful. And it's almost like we get to be a whole person again, right? We get to let all of the parts of ourselves, internal family systems talks about this. Like, we get to have like the defiant part or the scared part, like they all get a seat at the table. And that can be just so healing to come back into the wholeness of being all of ourselves without the shame or the I'm bad or wrong or whatever.
We really do teach people how to love every part of themselves, to understand the way we're wired, and to love not just what's great, but what's not working so well. And then, to take it a step further, once you are aware, you're not probably going to go down that rabbit hole that much anymore.
Right. Because if there's shame and there's a part of you that can't accept or look at that part, then when that pattern plays out, we're kind of like not able to really fully engage with it because it's fragmented over here. So let's move into the spiritual layer. So the awareness layer is a bit spiritual, right? That consciousness or that self-awareness of ourselves. But in the spiritual layer of the body, we are tackling religious trauma essentially, because a lot of people, whether you believe in this lifetime or past lifetimes, there's going to be some beef with God or with religion. And so we do try to peel religion away from our spirituality so that we're really working with the soul and the source, the divine source and the soul, when we're building the spiritual layer or plugging that person's soul into source in a way that maybe hasn't happened. And that takes rewiring and practice. Just being able to, in the mental layer of the body, figure out what they believe and who is divine. That part is important, but also the embodied experience of connection with our sacred heart or soul space, and the ability to feel divine, to feel the divine within, based in whatever religion that person comes in. So we can work with we have worked with all religions and atheists and agnostics. So it's not, spirituality is not belief system dependent. And then we find a way to help them activate that so that they can learn how to feel that sweet nectar of divine connection in their daily life, which is the bliss layer of the body.
Yes, I think that this is one of the most fun parts of the work with people, each different client and what they come in with and what their beliefs are, and giving a person the space again to just find their own truth and their own connection, to see what shows up for them. To see them connect with divine is, I can't even put it into words how wonderful it is. But I don't think I've ever seen anybody not anyone that's come through this work has not felt closer to themselves, even spiritually, whether it's just light or universe or nature or, Mother Earth or God or everyone. There are a million words for it. So we just work with the person to allow them to see what divine feels like for them.
And
And
that's the key word. What does divine feel like within their body or within their heart? And
yeah,
that's so different, like you said, from what their beliefs are. And I've seen so many people be shocked about what shows up spiritually for them, because it often doesn't align with what they thought. Meaning, people who don't believe in anything will have a divine connection that's like, oh, I didn't expect that. Or people who had rigid belief systems, something showed up in their consciousness that really was a delightful surprise. So it's so beautiful to see divine consciousness get activated in someone's within themselves, because this is where fulfillment comes from. I think this is what everybody's looking for love in all the wrong places, right? We're looking for love outside of ourselves. And when the soul plugs in like click into their source, it's kind of like all the lights in the building go on, right? The building was there and the physical was there, but like the warmth and the depth and the color comes into life in a really beautiful way. And that's how EMDR or any of the other treatments to trauma may or may not actually get someone into their joy or their love or their beauty or the depth of that sweet nectar of connection to the love that they are. And that God, God is love, love heals, right? Divine is love. And so that frequency of fifth dimensional heart connection really is such a critical thing to get wired in to someone's inner being. And that does take time. It starts in the soul retrieval process, right? It gets dropped in there, but the sustained relationship with divine is one, like any relationship, you have to keep showing up for and allowing it to evolve and grow and expand.
Talk about a difference between feeling our heavier emotions and what people have fears of. And on this side of the coin, we feel into our bliss layer and the divine. And oftentimes it's wonderful to watch somebody kind of go into their heart and just never want to come out. And just when they're really feeling that connection with their own soul.
Then there's also the divine power that gets activated through this rewiring work. Like, oh, I can attract what I want in life, or I have the power to feel safe in speaking my truth, or to actually feel like I'm there with myself when I, take that risk. So really connecting to someone's own divine power is absolutely critical, because divine can be strong, it can be protective, it can be like a sanctuary of protective space. And when someone actually recognizes that they are divine and that they can really precipitate or manifest whatever it is they desire, we use law of resonance and law of attraction to manifest healing, and to sustain healing. And so the woo woo becomes more of a practical data set on, like, we get data on how I can align with my heart and set my intentions, attract what I desire, and that's a repeatable process. I don't have to sit around for some gray man in the sky to like decide whether he's going to give me what I want in life. I can actually have the divine power within me to create, because I was put on this planet to create my reality. And man, that sacred power, when that gets activated in folks and we use it to create their healing, um, it's like they don't need anything outside of themselves except the loving, humanity that they can co-create with.
It's fun to watch people actually note the data of what they can manifest.
Yeah, so we help them create the space to be able to go in and then make it more tangible, because the ego is going to be like, yeah, that's crap. That's not true, because the ego's here to be rational and keep us safe. But once the soul consciousness almost displaces the ego consciousness, meaning the soul gets into the driver's seat and is running life and making the decisions, then the ego mind kind of surrenders and is like, okay, I'll just be the trusty helper. And then the soul gets to make the decisions and attract situations and feel like the sacred power that we're all really craving. So having data collection, like having a data set, on our spiritual power and wisdom and who we are is, and to have that in black and white is absolutely critical, so that when the mind wants to debate it, it's less debatable, because the mind now has the tangible data on who we are spiritually. And when we wire someone up like that, it's kind of like they're good to go, because now they have the divine wisdom within them. They're not looking for us or anyone else to guide them in that. Okay, so now let's touch. We're only going to touch on the energetic layer of the body, because we're going to have a whole episode on the Ayurvedic koshas, doshas, chakras, which basically means there are these layers of the body, the koshas. There are the elements within the body, which we call the doshas in Ayurveda. We just simplify in inner alignment: air, which we call the bird constitution; fire, which we call the lion constitution; and earth, which we call the bear constitution. So we just kind of simplify it in our work, so it's less woo-woo and it's more tangible. And we help people understand there are 7 different combinations. So we help them understand their Ayurvedic psychology, so that when these thoughts show up, or when these tendencies or patterns show up, they understand how it relates to their doshic constitution, and they can build awareness and know what to do to balance those constitutions. And man, that brings a ton of self-acceptance and awareness. And it helps them, as I said, with the judgment, the self-judgment on their shadow, and it helps them claim their gifts and what they're here and what their nature is. And to be able to claim that is just so critical in life.
Really helps them to understand themselves and others. They process life differently.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I do a lot of couples work, and having an integrated understanding of your Ayurvedic psychology or your dosha constitution is like literally is 75% of the healing of couples. I mean, 25% is the healing of the trauma, which is super important, but the understanding of the doshic balances and imbalances in each of them. So often we'll have a bird who's married to a horse, like a fiery, earthy person, and the bird is projecting bird onto this horse, and the horse is projecting horse onto the bird. And really, they're just like 2 totally different patterns of thoughts and emotions and tendencies and fear patterns. And once you claim and own your pattern, then you can show up in any space owning that, knowing what the gifts of that pattern are and the drawbacks, and to be able to very quickly type the people who are around you, so that you can set up pretty realistic thoughts and expectations of what they're capable of and what their soul and shadow is going to look like. I have a spiritual teacher that says compassion is understanding plus love. And so what the Ayurvedic constitutions give us, when we really understand the underlying psychological tendencies or thought patterns, emotions, is a depth of understanding with some sense of love connected to it that develops profound self-compassion and compassion for other people. And it is like aloe on the wound of relationship issues. It is profound when we have that self-understanding, that relationship understanding. So we work with their constitutions and build the understanding and balance them on every layer of that constitutional imbalance throughout the 2 months together, so that they are the most grounded bird they can be, or they can be the most balanced and grounded lion, cooled off temper they can be, or they can be the most motivated bear. So then post-program, once they've wired this up, it takes about 40 to 60 days to create new neurosynaptic wiring and new neurochemistry. Once they wire it up, all they need to do is continue their practices post-program to sustain the feeling of healing.
That's why we really try to anchor it into the client, how important it is during the 8 weeks, so that when they're off and running, often we partner them with the momentum buddy, and they can continue for even longer until they're on their own. And it really does become like the workout. It's part of my day.
Yeah, so if it took them 40 years of having a trauma packet and then wiring that into the way they think, feel, and the habits of their life, then, 40 days, like, or 2 months will create a new energetic packet, a new auto-associated neural wiring. But it will take, some time of continued practice for that to get really stable in someone's vibration. We open ourselves to be able to do soul retrievals to graduates, but we are not taken up on it very often because people really know what they need to do to sustain that healed experience, whether that's safe or connected or loved or whatever it was that we built in them with them through rewiring. They know what they need to do to sustain it. So it's and to build that community beyond this program too, where we pair people up and have that spiritual community for them to really be able to speak this language and have others with them alongside each other is just such a gift. Thank you so much, Christine, for going into the depths of this conversation. It's such a joy to be with you and to work alongside you. I'm just so grateful for the gifts that you bring in your rewiring work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you as well, Kim. I'm honored to be here. And thank you for creating this fantastic system that really, really works
Yeah,
like
thank you.
nothing
Thanks
else.
to Divine for the
Yes.
download.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, you guys, thanks for joining us. Have a great week. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to today's Inner Alignment podcast. If you're ready to dive deeper into your anxiety or depression healing process, learn more about our 2-month Inner Alignment healing program. The healing program addresses trauma on all 6 layers of the body, and the program has been successful for over 400 participants. If you're feeling ready to join the community of healers who provide this sacred and profound healing work in the world, maybe it's time to become an Inner Alignment practitioner. If you think this is your dharma or your life purpose, be in touch. Find out more at KimberlyBeekman.com.